Alexander is the Senior Vice President and Chief Economist for TD Bank Group. In that role, he manages a large team of economists who support all of the divisions and clients of TD, which is the second largest bank in Canada and the 8th largest bank in the United States. Craig has 15 years of experience in the private sector as an economic and financial forecaster, and he's one of Canada's most respected economists, a top commentator on public policy, and a great friend of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce.
So when we think about the global economy, I got to be cognizant that you just had dinner, and at this point your stomachs could be getting queasy, and you may be unsettled. Well, when you come to North America, the story gets more positive, right? So you can enjoy your dessert. In the case of North America, I think there's a very strong argument to be made that the U.S. economy is actually delivering stronger growth. I think that the U.S. economy that's been trapped in a growth rate of around 2% since this recovery started is probably going to pick up to a growth rate a little under 3% over the next couple of years in U.S. exports. But the U.S. domestic demand is actually likely to grow at a solid pace. Consumers are likely to be spending. Jobs are being created. Make no mistake, the drop in gasoline prices is like a tax cut for Americans, right? So there's a lot of reasons to believe domestic demand in the United States is going to improve, and that's going to take us up to something like 2.8% growth on average the next 2 years. But there again, I remember when the U.S. government is now getting out of the way. Last year, higher taxes and government spending cuts lopped 1.3 points off of U.S. growth. This year, fiscal policy will cut 0.8. Next year, it'll cut 0.3. So in other words, the U.S. government's getting out of the way, and the domestic demand should pick up. And this is good news for Canada, because Canada is basically California. You look at our population; it's about the size of California. You look at the size of our economy; it's about the size of California. But we're spread across the entire width of the northern border of the United States. And so Canada is very much integrated along north-south lines, not east-west lines. And the stronger U.S. economy will boost our non-resource exports. The drop in commodity prices is going to be a struggle for a lot of the commodity producers. But I think on balance what we're going to find is the Canadian exports improve. I think investment in the non-resource sector will strengthen. What we're really worried about right now is the fact that if energy prices stay where they are today for an extended period of time, you're going to see investment in the energy patch getting scaled back. And so that might mean we don't see as much of a lift on investment. I think consumers will keep spending. Unemployment in Canada is actually low. I know people often it doesn't feel that way, but the level of unemployment today is actually at close to its long-term average. It's certainly not elevated. So there are jobs. Jobs are being created. The unemployment rate's not high. Consumers are going to spend, but you know what they're not going to do? They're not going to ratchet up their debt. They've got the message. Personal debt growth has slowed, and 80% of debt growth is related to housing. And this is one of the reasons why the housing market is relatively cool on a national average basis, although we're still seeing a lot of strength in Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver. I have a suspicion that oil prices are going to take care of the Calgary story. So I think Calgary is going to cool off, and then it'll turn into a story about Toronto and Vancouver. I do think we have overbuilding. I do think we have overvaluation. But that's what you get when you run interest rates this low for this long. Right? I do a lot of real estate presentations, and the thing that scares me the most is the number of young people that think the level of mortgage rates today is normal. And I'm always like, could you please have a conversation with the gray-haired gentleman at your table about the level of mortgage rates, right? And you hear, I remember when I had an 18% mortgage in 1982. We're not going back there. But this level of interest rates is abnormally low, and it can't be sustained indefinitely. I do think that ultimately, as the economy grows, the Bank of Canada is eventually going to raise rates. So I think that the pace of growth in Canada is going to remain relatively moderate. It'll be somewhere around the 2.5% mark, which on an international basis is not going to be a terrible performance. We're probably going to see the Canadian dollar come down a little further, which is good for our exporters, but will make a lot of Canadian snowbirds very unhappy. I think the economy actually is not going to do terribly, but I do think we're in a moderate growth, low inflation world for an extended period of time. So when interest rates come up, first of all, I don't think the bank's going to raise rates till probably at least October of next year, and it could even get delayed if low oil prices take a bigger toll than we're anticipating. And then even when rates go up, I think they're going to go up very gradually. So I think we need to keep our expectations realistic, right? The continuation of the moderate growth, low inflation, low interest rate world is going to persist. But let me tell you, in that theme, I'd much rather be in Canada than most of the rest of the advanced world.